That's a cool little gizmo, huh?
All right, you can start off by introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Joe Malone, and we're talking about some of the dance history, the oral history as I know it. So,
Yes.
Trying to figure out where the best place to start is. I started dancing later in life. I started dancing at 20, basically my training. So I was very influenced by the early musicals, right? Okay. So Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, the West Side Story in particularly. When West Side Story came out for my generation, that was the first time that men had that kind of a character where it was rough and tumble, even though it was very stylized. It was, it was much different than some of the more classic kind of way someone would think about dancing. So these two gangs, and they used dance as a way to, as a way to battle, which turned out to be actually thematic in the streets later, didn't it? So. So anyway, that was my first introduction was movie musicals and the theater. So when I started dancing, like as I said, the history is oral. It's just now because of people like you starting to come out, and where someone's really looking into how it moved. Right? We know that the major influence came from vaudeville theater. That's where dancing really became formalized in song and dance men. And then of course Bill Robinson, the Nicholas Brothers, all the great tap dancers of that era kind of created this other movement. At the time they called it eccentric. It would be called eccentric dancing, like something that Ray Bolger did in The Wizard of Oz, right? It played the Scarecrow. He was an eccentric dancer. Buddy Epson, those kind of things were these very, very stylized, the stylized stuff. And then there was very classical ballet and modern companies, and so there was this very divergence of kind of the styles of dancing, but in lots of ways, as we know, jazz dancing in particularly was formulated a lot on African tribal steps. If you look at any classic, classic jazz stuff, or a lot of the movements that we have, we took from that culture, we borrowed from that culture, or we assimilated from that culture. So. Especially with the people I got to work with, the Michael Peters and Claude Thompson and Lester Wilson. Claude Thompson he and Alvin Ailey were the two first black men in America to do solo dancing that I'm aware of, in some kind of formalized situation. They did Porgy and Bess, in particularly with Carmen de Lavallade, and it was just this huge. It was a danced piece. And then Alvin Ailey, of course, went on to start his company. Claude worked for years and years and years in Europe and here, but as in television and things. So I was so fortunate to be able to study with him when he was alive. So it was Claude to Lester, and Lester was a young man in high school that was doing Broadway shows at night, and he'd do a Broadway show, and then he'd go to a club and dance, another kind of something somewhere uptown, So, and then Lester and Michael Peters, who I got to work with quite a bit. He was the one that started what I would call the storytelling videos. So, he did Billie Jean, he did Beat It, which is when I first got to dance with him, and Michael Jackson, and he did Thriller, he did all those storytelling videos. So actually Beat It was very West Side Story-ish in its design. So and Michael Jackson used to use often he would use at least when we were working on this kind of stuff that I worked with him on, he would use a template from a very, very famous kind of movie musical like Smooth Criminal, the brilliant piece that Vincent Patterson did. I was the assistant choreographer on, and they used the Girl Hunt ballet from Bandwagon kind of as a loose, template. It's a Sid Charisse and Fred Astaire number.
Tell us what that experience was like
with Michael.
Yes, and putting together that piece and the dancers and the role that you played and how you interact with him.
Well, Michael. Love that man. So I met him first with Diana Ross when they just got done doing The Wiz, right? And so he had come to her concert. We were doing her show at the Universal Amphitheater when it was still an amphitheater, right? Before they built it into a theater. And at the very, very beginning of the show, this was like one of the great pieces of theater that, you know, David Winters was I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. I apologize. Okay. David Winters was the director and choreographer, and he used Billy Goodson, who was a street dancer at the time, right? Who now is a huge choreographer here in America and also in Europe, Italy, and France in particularly. But Billy came like straight from the clubs, so, and then trained himself very much like Victor. You know, a lot of the guys that were able to continue once they started to participate in. And we were together. They said, well, I want to learn a little bit more of that. And we said, well, we want to learn a little more of that. And so we kind of, you know, try to help each other that way. But David Winters did two unbelievable things. He was the first one that I ever saw do a magic screen. Magic screen is pieces of elastic that are strung in a frame. So it looks like a movie screen when you're back away from it because it overlaps just slightly. So when you look at it, it looks like one solid piece. So there was this huge screens on the stage that started with Diana Ross's pictures of her, and then at one point in time it was 77, I think 77 or 78. One of those years, but it was when Studio 54 was like at its height, and that male kind of androgynous character was in, and Diana Ross had to shave all our body hair and, you know, slick our hair and put on these gauze shirts and sprayed on pants with knee-high boots and big platform heels, and that was our costume. Anyway, we're coming down. David Winters shoots us in a movie. And it's a staircase, what I call an infinity staircase. It just looks like it goes to heaven or it goes to infinity. And all of a sudden, these figures, we have her over our head, and we're coming down these stairs, right? So in this movie, we're coming down the stairs, and she's sitting, she's singing, you know, "Ain't No Mountain," or I think it's what she was singing. And we come down, and we're on the movie. The stairs on the movie go to the stairs on the stage. And what happens is the last stair in the movie and the next stair on the stage, we pull open this elastic and we pop off of the screen onto the stage. So we're walking in the movie, and the next thing you know, we come through the screen. It was just a crazy, crazy, wonderful piece of theater. But before that, David Winters hired a helicopter to fly over the amphitheater with a light board underneath that says, "Diana loves you, she's coming." And then it would take off. So after we opened, as soon as the people started hearing the helicopter, they started to scream, right? Just screaming because, you know, Diana Ross, right? It was crazy. It was so loud that even with this huge orchestra, it was like 80-piece orchestra or something. It was 14 singers, like there were 5 or 6 street dancers and 4 of us that did more the train stuff, you know, and I couldn't hear the music. People were screaming so loud you couldn't hear the frickin' music, so it was amazing. Anyway, but that's where I met Michael the first time. Then I was lucky enough to be cast by Michael Peters in Beat It, and we danced. Got to see him again. But when I really got to spend the most time with him was during Smooth Criminal. So that's it. Michael was at his height. That's when he was doing those Pepsi commercials, and I mean, he was just making gobs of dough. You know what I mean? He just showed up, and they were throwing money at him, and rightly so. The man was like unbelievable. Anyway, he. But we were working on this, and he rented the soundstage and built this set. You know, with the set that you see was one big set that was continuous set, just like it looked like on the film, and in the video, and we rehearsed, and then we rehearsed on the stage, and he said one day. He turned to Vincent, and I was just lucky enough to be part of the conversation. It's not normal that, you know, usually when the bigwigs are talking about creative things, but I'm fortunate to be included at least to be able to hear those conversations. But Michael turned to Vincent one day and he said, and it's the only time I've ever heard anybody say it before or since. He looked at him. He said, "Anything you can imagine, we'll try. Money is no object." And I just went, holy crap. I've never heard anybody say money's no object in my life. But that's how deeply he felt about his work. And if we could think about it and there was a way to do it, he would try to do it. It was like that. So I got to spend a lot of time with him. Vincent, because it was so movement centric, right? And the director that we had was also a very talented special effects guy. Was the one that helped shoot all the special effects in Superman, right? And that's that's the Christopher Reeve one where he really looked like he was flying for the first time, and we all kind of went. Ugh. So I've forgotten the gentleman's name, Colin something, but so Vincent really helped with the shots of dancing because it's very specific, but all that effect stuff with the guy with the big knife and he shoots him and he goes into the wall and all that stuff that they did, that's all that, the leans and all, so
whose idea was that?
And the leaning thing,
yeah.
I don't recall. I don't remember that in particularly.
Did Michael bring his own feel to it and you guys worked around him?
It was both. So Vincent created the dancing and Michael had ideas. He'd say, I want to do something like this in this section.
There was a bar scene, tap dancing like on a table.
That little tap thing, that was his, when we do what I call the theme combination, that one, right, that we all do over and over. And he put that little tap break in because he wanted to do that. So, but that'll show you who Michael was. Vincent came to me and he said, you have rehearsal tomorrow with Michael. And I went, okay, well, what time are we coming? He said, well, we're not. You are. I went, what do you mean I am? It's going to be you and Michael. I said, where? He said, here. So Michael, I showed up on when I was supposed to with Michael, and we had our music, and that it can't be more than eight counts of eight.
One-on-one?
One-on-one. It can't be more than 8 counts of 8. That combination, it repeats. And Michael was so quick with movement. I mean, it was like after a few times you'd look and just go, damn, you look good. And he could just learn it quick, really quick study. The only person I saw that was ever faster than that was Janet, his sister. Janet would just stand. When she was a little girl, I taught a private that she took sometimes with her friends. There was like 2 or 3 of them, but she came with another friend. It was pre-fame days and stuff, and I'm sure she doesn't remember, but she'd be standing and I'd be doing the combination and she'd just stand and look and I'd say, Janet, do you want to dance? And she says, no, I haven't. And I go, well, can I see it? And she would just do it spot on. She's like, that's crazy. Anyway, so she and her brother so fast, was my experience with them. But anyway, we're working on it for like an hour, 2 hours. And he's just killing it, you know what I mean? He looks fantastic. And I said, all right, Michael, I guess we're done. He said, I'm not done. I said, you look fantastic. He said, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, but I'm still thinking. And I said, still thinking? He said, yeah, I'm still thinking. And tomorrow when the music comes on, I want my body just to respond with these steps. And I thought to myself, that's why you're fucking Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? That's why you're you and other people aren't. Is that amount of work, even on something so, so that detailed work on anything he did was so important to him. So like 50 dancers on this thing, and Vincent did an unbelievable job, and all the special effects with the coin that goes through the air, right? That goes in. And now that sadly that Michael's no longer with us, I'll tell you that he couldn't flip the coin. That was like the hardest part for him. He'd go like pling, pling. So eventually he got a good flip out of it. But anyway, it was unbelievable. But as long as we're talking about him, I have to tell you that because of how everything went, one of my responsibilities was to make sure he was always okay after each take, and if he wanted to do it again, and I would just confer. But he had the Make-A-Wish kids come on. You're familiar with that? The Make-A-Wish Foundation. That's kids that are within very, very close to their the end of their lives, projected end of their lives, based on serious diseases, and mostly cancer and blood diseases. I think was the young people that were there. And they would come almost every day on the set, it seemed. and he would sit with them and how'd I do, and take his hat and put it on his head, and you know what I mean, do all that kind of stuff, right? And I could barely even look over at them without crying. It was so hard for me, and so touched. And so I asked him, I said, hey, can I ask you something? And he said, of course. I said, how do you do that? And I said, do what? I said, these young people, and you're so amazing and compassionate with them, and it's inspiring. It's inspired. And I said, I couldn't do it. And he said, oh, you know why that is, Joey? He said, it's because when you look at them, you think about the time they have left. And when I look at them, I think about the time we have together. So that's who that man was. Lady Blacksmith Manzambo, right? The black African singing group.
Yes.
that came from with Paul Simon did the Graceland album, right? And they wanted to meet Michael so badly that they had come down came to rehearsal, and they had written him a song, and I think that they were singing Afrikaans. I don't remember now, but it was a dialect of wherever they were from. And it was about the moon, and how that Michael was like the moon, and
that's what can't happen at the end of the movie.
Yeah, all that. But they actually came, and Michael this is how generous that man was. He stopped rehearsal, took all the dancers, all 50 of us, and sat us down with him, and they performed this song. It was a religious experience for me. I had never seen any or felt anything in that kind of way before. It was unbelievable. That man's effect on culture, and everyone's own voice, and the validity of everyone's voice. I think Michael did a lot more than people sometimes realize, at least for me. Anyway, but we had street dancers in that too, right? So, because he did the same thing. All the guys that were doing, obviously all the guys that were doing all the lean stuff, those are all street cats, right? All guys that are popping and, doing all that. And Michael would always put those two groups of people together. Actually in Beat It, which bears mentioning, we were having a really, really difficult time in Los Angeles at that time with the Bloods and the Crips, right? Yeah. And so he decided that he was going to hire, that's who was going to be the other dancers in this, or the other members of the gangs, right? Because it was like the Jets and the Sharks, like I said. So he took those two gangs and hired members from those gangs, real gangs, right? But then he took those two gangs and said, okay, if you're going to do the video, then I'm going to split your gangs in half, and half of the Bloods and half of the Crips are going to be gang one, and half of the Bloods and half of the Crips are going to be gang two. And if you don't want to do that, then don't do it. If you're going to fight, then forget it, right? And then us dancers went into those gangs. So it was like, it's crazy. That was a crazy experience, because you have to confront all your prejudice,
He wanted to unify.
He wanted to unify that, and by the time they're done, everyone's like rooting for their side. You know what I mean? It was just such a demonstration of how if a human being's heart is pure. Yeah. Right, and that we're all the same, right? We just got something in our heads that got twisted, and we inherited this kind of wrong thinking about each other. You know what I mean? And it takes root, and it's hard to get out. Anyway, Michael, whew. So, but anyway, that whole street and trained thing started back then that I remember. And I was lucky because I came through the last part of variety television. Variety television still had some legs at the time, right? Reality television, as we know, is what has legs now. And personally, I have I know that it helps in certain ways. For me, I think that when people compete artistically, there's something intrinsically wrong with that idea. Art can't compete, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I get it, I'm not dumb about it, but it's really hard for me to watch, because someone's now being judged based on a comparative of someone else when there is no comparative, Then I'd say to myself, well, I guess they joined it. I just won't watch it. I don't watch American Idol. I don't watch So You Think You Can Dance. I just don't watch it because I think that all those people have a right to their expression, you know. But I do understand why they would enter, because it's kind of a fast track, right? But what I do think it's done is I think it has cheapened the amount of effort that it takes to be able to be great at what you do, because it appears the way it's done that they just popped up and they have, you know, that you don't have to work hard for something. All you have to do is find the lottery. You know, it's like, you know, trying to do business by winning the lottery to me, you know. And unfortunately, that's just not what, well, I don't know if it's unfortunate, it's just not what life is. I mean, life's about effort, isn't it? So, and about what's in your heart. So, not that some of those artists don't have that. It's just that the way that it's presented is, I think we have to be a little careful. Because, yeah, the structure of it. Yeah, because when you look back, you know, we had our own version of talent shows. It just, nobody competed against each other, right? I mean, Soul Train was a big talent show, wasn't it? Or it was Shabadoo and all those cats, right? They found a voice. They found an audience. They introduced things, you know. And I guess, you know, American Bandstand in its way, and it started to cross over, and audiences that normally didn't, you know, interact, you know, or at least culturally at the time, you know, there was tension. Not that there isn't now, but I think it helped, right? But it gave those guys, gave them a chance to be heard and seen to me.
So you were able to see street dancing and contemporary dancing exist side by side back in the early days, and you were able to see street dancing grow to what it is today. And so take us back. You were doing contemporary dancing, and just share some of the friends like Victor and some of the other street dancers that you knew at the time, and how, you know, like you were sharing earlier about how you were able to call each other and share about different jobs and the unions, and how all of that, you know, operated during those days.
Yeah, well, the union's kind of a difficult thing, especially for dancers, because all of the union stuff really started in theater and in radio, right? So there wasn't a whole bunch of dancing on radio. So singers and actors, you know, had kind of a different track when television was invented, and, you know, when they would have, you know, a place in the movies and things like that. So dancing already kind of was a little behind in the sense of its place in the negotiation field, in the sense of dancers. So, you know, I'll give you, for instance, I know I'm talking in circles a little bit. So when we first started talking about the merger of the unions, which now has come about, which is I believe a wonderful thing. The actors, it was AFTRA to SAG, and SAG didn't have all the same kind of categories that AFTRA did. American Federation of Television Artists, right? Screen Actors Guild. So there's actors, you know, pretty much, and stunt people. So there's some stunt people, and some people crossed over a little bit. But there was radio people, television people, specialty people, you know, in AFTRA. And so when we were going to combine these unions, people were afraid they wouldn't be represented. You know, the actors at that time, not all of them, but many of them were we don't want them in our union, those guys. We don't want radio announcers in our union. We don't want newscasters in our union, you know, kind of feeling at that time. And so we started sharing stories, and I was really lucky. I was a series regular on first one was called Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters, right? There was a weekly variety show that was country, you know, that when she really crossed over, you know, into mainstream. And AFTRA scale at that time for a series regular dancer was $500 a week. Actors were like in the thousands. If I had been an actor in a series regular, it started at a couple of thousand a week. It didn't start down there. So when they found out, they were like horrified. They were just shocked, right? Barbara Mandrell, being the woman that she is, found out how much money we were making and gave us a raise. She said, "That's ridiculous. You can't ask them to work for that." Well, it's union scale. I don't care if it's union scale or not. Those men deserve more money than that. So, you know, fortunately, there's always been artists that felt that way. But anyway, so the union situation was a little odd because dancers, when they had an opportunity to pick between Screen Actors Guild and Screen Extras Guild, the Extras Guild in the 30s and the 40s, I'm told, was a much stronger union. And they were doing so many movies for a while. A lot of the dancers, a lot of my dance teachers were dancers at that time. And they were doing, sometimes they'd work 2 movies at a time. Judy Garland was for instance, was a reported insomniac, so she liked to shoot at night. So some of them would shoot one movie on one lot from like 6 in the morning to 6 at night, get dinner and start with her, and start at this other movie like 8 and go 8 to 5, and then they get 2 hours sleep, and they're doing 2 movies at the same time. So that was the Screen Extras Guild. So they were making lots of dough, really happy, had a very strong union. But as time went on, the Extras Guild got weaker and weaker, and the Screen Actors Guild got stronger and stronger. And then, of course, that's not the guild, that's not the union that the dancers were in for film. Basically, anything that was videotaped would be AFTRA. Anything that was filmed, one camera, would be SAG. So even if you're doing an SAG film, you would get hired as an extra. So you're dancing some of these great movies you see people dancing their cans off, right? They're being paid as an extra. Thank God It's Friday, for instance, right? That all the dancers, that was Alpha and and Shabadoo and I can't remember everybody. I mean, it was like everybody that was everybody. Joanne DeVito hired, and who's big, really big in the dance world now, helping dancers in many different ways. But she's a choreographer at that time, and. Wow. And so there were train dancers, there were street dancers. It was just like, it was crazy. So that's, that was in 76 or 7. Donna Summer, Donna Summer, the Commodores and Donna Summer kind of came out in that, in that time. She sang Last Dance at that thing. It was that was the big disco era, right? Yeah. So all those guys, they were king. The street dancers were king in disco era. That kings. So, and there was... Who
was getting the work, though? Were you guys, the contemporary dancers, getting the work with the recording artists, or was it the street dancers?
It started to be both. So it wasn't quite, it's a little bit more of a hybrid now. At the time, there were, the street dancers were purely that. I mean, they whacked and they posed and they, and they broke, and they didn't break yet. They whacked and they posed and they do the alpha. They had some tricks and they locked, right? Locking started, around that time. And so they would do those kind of things, right? And we were more of trained, jazz dancers, quote unquote. So what would happen is that a lot of choreographers started to just melt those together. So we danced together. Some of the like Sugar Pop or Taco Pop and Casper and those guys would have to start learning a little bit of what we did, and then we'd have to do a little bit of what they did, like spin on our back or whatever it was. They have to try to teach us to do that, and they just look and say you're worthless. And but we used to talk I used to talk with them because all the time, and I used to say, okay, now listen, you're really talented, but this style is going to keep morphing into other things. So you need to, you have some talent. You should train a little bit, And so some of them poo-pooed me, and some of them said okay. But Billy Goodson was like that, and Lonnie. So, but they whacked and did shui and so. But we started to work more and more. But it was always like, who was it? Oh,
so you was able to see the street dancing from. It started to merge with the contemporary from back in the 70s. Yeah. And then it became stronger in the 80s and 90s by people like Michael Jackson, and then other artists like Janet Jackson and others started to fuse the two together to try to make a stronger stage performance.
Yeah, I think that what happened where it really turned the corner, at least this is just my personal observation, and I'm not an expert in this field in that way at all. But what I noticed when it really changed is when popping and breaking started, because that was a really unique set of skills. You could kind of, disco-y, there's partner disco-y, and you could kind of get in there a little bit and not look too foolish if you weren't sure what you're doing, but you had to know how to pop. And those guys started to try to teach us. I could not, I could not believe how hard it was. I gained an entire respect for how many hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
For actual work, video production work, stage work that they were teaching you, or just because you guys...
Well, I just was looking at, sometimes they'd want to do like a line or something like that, you know what I mean? The choreographer would want something, and so they want as many dancers to do it as possible. So I really enjoyed doing that. You know, I really like that feel, and you know, I could kind of do a semi-fake version of it. I would never say I could do it, but I didn't look horribly out of place. You know what I mean? But when those guys were really popping, or when they started doing the stuff like Michael did, Michael could really do it, right? And he worked on it. He used to work. Michael told me that he used to, on Sundays, it was kind of his dance day, you know, and he would just lock himself in his studio and just work on things. Just work and work and work and work and work. Because I asked him if he studied. He said, you know, I tried that a little bit. It just didn't work. You know, at that time when I had talked to him, I don't know what his previous training had been, but he said he just kind of liked picking it up and learning it from people and then practicing it. You know, it's kind of his way. So, but I saw them start. So everybody, because it was so freaking flashy, people doing you know, helicopters and you know what I mean, and spinning on their head, and you know what I mean. That stuff, you can't beat that with a stick. I mean,
so the stage shows changed from the Diana Ross era of the 70s to now. It became more physical with the popping and breaking in the 80s, along with the contemporary.
Well, Diana actually was the first that I remember seeing it, and please know that my sense of it was small, right? Okay. I didn't go to clubs. I wasn't a big club guy, but so most of it was happening in the clubs. And when you go into the clubs, they were killing it. Okay. But it hadn't made mainstream yet. And Diana was the first one that I'm aware of that kind of put it in her show, because David Winters was in the original West Side Story. I mean, he was that kind of dancer, right? He was trained, contemporary, balletic, and jazz dancer, right? And Billy was Billy Goodson, complete street dancer. So what happened is that when it came time for for the number that we did, Lonnie was this unbelievable gymnast. You know, he could just, besides dancing and doing all that stuff, whacking and doing that well, he could just sail. So he flipped. Billy just had this really great kind of groove that he had and posed, and Andrew was complete pose, complete like drag queen on the stairs with the stuff, right? Just posing. You know, when we got ready for the first show, Billy came up and he said, "What is that?" He had his nails done, he'd had his hair done. He said, "You have to take those nails off." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because you can't have your fingernails longer than hers." So, bless his heart. Anyway, but he had it was so great. Like, they would, and Diana would joke with him in the show. She had this beautiful white fox fur that she came out in, in one of these numbers, and Andrew came out to get it, and he was carrying it, and then he make like he was going to put it on. She said, "You can't wear it." Chaw. So it's just all that, right? So, and then her nephew Chico, I think is his name, was he roller skated, so he was doing some of the roller skate disco stuff, right? So one was flipping, Billy was just dancing his butt off. Chico was roller skating, Andrew was posing, right? And then we would do more of the structure stuff where we'd lift her, more of a traditional number, I would say, right? But they mixed us. I mean, we were in there together.
And what year was that?
I think it's 77 or 78, I want to say.
Okay.
So, because I think that Thank God It's Friday was 77. It was all right in there in that late 70s groove. Because when we went to New York, we played Radio City. And when we played Radio City, we had been invited to, Studio 54, in like its heyday. So,
and what do you think about what John Travolta was doing in his movie, as far as the hustle and?
Yeah, that stuff. That was a lot of what the disco movement was, right? And if you go back and look at that movie, and bless John Travolta's heart, I mean, good for him. I thought he did really well. Lester Wilson actually said a lot of that. So I'm not sure he's credited for everything, but I don't know. I don't remember that for fact. I'd have to fact check that, but
Okay.
I can't remember if it might have been that or The Wiz. I get all the movie stuff confused. I can't remember what was what, but I know that Lester worked with him. So a lot of that like knee stuff down and up, that was kind of Alpha's thing, and so. But I thought that John Travolta did real well with that stuff, and but if you look around at who's dancing with them, then you'll start to see some of the guys that were dancing at the time. Okay. You know what I mean? Especially the couple stuff. Those guys are eating it up. So you just have to, because that's who got hired to dance around in the club, all those club scenes, the people that could really do it. It's still like that. Yeah. So when I was doing some scenes in Ugly Betty, and we'd be in a salsa club, we got salsa folks to come in and do their thing, right? Wow. They could really do it. So I think it's always been like that, at least in my time.
So if someone wanted to look up some of the work that you have done in terms of your dancing and maybe choreography on YouTube, who are some of the people that you worked with that they might can type into YouTube to see some of your work if it's there? I did about 100 variety shows. Right, so I mean, I did Academy Awards forever and ever, and like Linda Carter was a big star. I did 3 or 4 of those, and I danced on Barbara Mandrell for a long time, and did a few movies, and then in the mid '80s, I was part of an ensemble of the Tracy Ullman Show, the original Tracy Ullman Show. So I was on that for 4 years. It was Tracy Ullman, myself, Sam McMurray, Dan Castellaneta, and Julie Kavner. We were she was a star, and we were on her show. So we did a lot of dance stuff. That's when Paula Abdul, Paula had started to do, Paula had come and become, very popular because of the stuff she'd been doing, I guess, with the Laker girls, right? And she was the choreographer in the second season of Tracy Ullman. So that's where I got to meet her. And when she was doing that, that's when she did, what was that? What was that first thing she did? Word Up? Was that video? What was that first thing that she did? No, that was somebody else. Anyway, no, her very, very first one. The very first one that she did. With the guy, the dancer that had the cane in it. What the heck was the name of that? No, Straight Up. Wasn't it Straight Up? I think it's Straight Up. So she was doing choreography on the Tracy Ullman Show, on our show, and she was also doing the dance for this video. And at the time, they were putting together video packages for MTV and VH1. They would just, it was like dance, and they just put together this something, and then they'd find somebody to do it, and off they'd go. So she was part of this creative team, and they were looking for somebody to front the number. She said, well, I can sing. Just like that. Well, that's how I remember it. So, and the next thing, and because they were looking for something, they couldn't find anybody they liked, and she could already dance like she can dance. So she said, well, I can sing it. So as I recall, that's how that kind of came down, and then she became the sensation that she became. So, but anyway, so it's all So it was all. What happened was, hi, hon. So what happened was that what happened is everybody started to cross over. So gymnastics came in, right? So the gymnastics came in, the street dancing came in. The street dancing became very physical, very gymnastic-like, didn't it? Yes. I mean, they were doing Thomas Flares on the floor, and everybody started to borrow from each other. People are flipping, and so when everybody started breaking it, went the early 80s, right? Yes. Started breaking, and then the gymnastic stuff, so it started to get, although there'd been gymnastics and the stuff that we did, but it was all kind of specialty stuff. But now it became a little more mainstream. And then these dance teams started incorporating some of the styles of what was happening in the street with their stuff. Paula being one, Barry Lather, who was the young man who actually wonderfully trained dancer, but he was the guy that did Janet's breakout thing? What have you done for me lately? Was that one? Anyway, one of those. But he came up with that kind of whole kind of what do we call that? Oh, my mind just gone terribly blank. Prepping, right? The whole the whole prepping stuff. Boom, shut. All that, right? So he started in with some of that. So then everything just started to become this wonderful stew of choreography. Everybody started borrowing,
right? And or being inspired. How about better, right? And then the street guys, you know, kept what I saw. The street guys were looking at what was done, and then they tried to take it to the next step. All right, now how can we take that to the next step? And how can we take that to the next step? To the point now, in my opinion, where if you look at someone like, if you look at like real true breakers, we've kind of come full circle again, and people, you know, b-boys and b-girls now are their own category of style and dancing. And a lot of what we used to call hip-hop just even 10 years ago has almost been incorporated into a jazz style. It's almost like the new contemporary jazz style. And it's very cool, you know, but it's been incorporated. Mia Michaels uses, I mean, and now it's got, you know, there's been this kind of wonderful cooperation that I see, but it has deep connections to me to, you know, that kind of street and urban stuff when it started to go together. We were first we're separate, and then okay, well, can you guys do something together? Okay, well then we'll do a little of this, and you'll teach us how to do a little of that, and through time and space, it started to, you know, with each new generation, right?
You were there when they start putting in the ingredients.
Yeah, so because it's exciting as hell. Who doesn't want to see that stuff? I mean, you know, it's fireworks.
So you create a super dancer.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They get many dancers in one when they merge the styles and have the dancers be more versatile to do all the dance styles.
Yeah. The thing and then the last component part to me, just since we're talking about it, is that I think that the last twist was what Cirque du Soleil did. So when Cirque got involved, it kind of twisted everything again. That opened the place for like a Mia Michaels, and you know who Mia Michaels is. She's one of the judges and the choreographer on So You Think You Can Dance. Mm-hmm. The blonde-haired woman. She's brilliant, freaking brilliant. But she had her own like company in New York, you know, for years and years and years before anybody knew, doing just that kind of stuff. And I think that as things kept shifting, it made room for all different kinds of expression. But I believe in my heart that, you know, besides companies and people that have those kind of visions, but I really feel like the street influence, right, had so much to do with what we look at as normal contemporary dancing now. If you look at the Laker girls, half that stuff's from the street. You know what I mean? In the sense, it's inspired from the street. The groove is inspired, or the hits are inspired, the accents are, you know, the passion, I think, is inspired. Mm-hmm. So it's become interesting. So to me.
So with over 40 years of being involved in dance and theater and the arts, and watching the whole thing evolve to what it is today, what made you decide to do what you're doing now here?
Well, thank you for asking. Along with the copying, right, of something that someone's inspired to do, right? The people that have come from the street, the people that whose passion it was to move like that. As anything, are copied by other people who copy the form, and not always. I don't feel like they always understand the heart. So I believe that an artist is an artist is an artist. We're not really concerned here with creating anything but artists. And what you want to be an artist at is up to you. But that to be an artist takes a different kind of commitment to yourself, and different kind of commitment to what you do. And what we saw is that in the same world where I believe, again, everything has its place. So I don't really poo-poo anything. So you going?
Well, Michelle
sorry.
and Michael were waiting.
Oh, just let the. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. I'll have to talk to. Can they work it out? Can they work out a schedule? So. So anyway, the reason that we started was, you know, while I believe everything has its place, has its and for people that want to have an experience like a dance team experience, right? That's fantastic. Everybody joins some kind of gang, don't they? At the end of the day, we either join the sports gang, we join the dance gang, we join the chess gang, the science gang, the literature gang, or we join a gang. You know, because everybody wants to feel a part of something that's of their peers. So I think that everything has a really wonderful, important place. The problem that I see is, or the problem that I feel is sometimes because of the popularity of what appears to be certain ways to be successful, there isn't always an opportunity for someone to develop themselves completely, because it looks like the game is to become successful, right? The game is to be this or be that, or get that prize or get this prize or get this trophy or get that trophy, rather than, which is all fine and has its place, but rather than deciding how you're going to live as a human being and what you're going to pursue and passionately, right? So we saw that there were lots of places where people could go and get on a team and compete and do those things, but we didn't see when we started the school a place where someone who was serious about their art had a place to come develop with people that are serious about their art. Not that other people aren't, but the people that teach here are all professional dancers or choreographers and have a passion to be able to help people develop themselves. Because I think there's a difference between working for a little while and having a career, right? It's just a different investment. And both have their place. But I'm not interested, you don't have to, well, how you look is in television and the movies is can be half of what goes on, or if you want to do commercials or things like that, you don't have to spend a whole bunch of time being good at something necessarily, right? But if you want to be able to express yourself fully, to be able to express your passion and move the needle a little bit on the people that come see you, then I really believe that we have to challenge ourselves and confront the parts of ourselves, right, positive and negative, that allow us to be able to touch an audience member's heart in a different way. And that really is just how much somebody's willing to go through, right? So if you want somebody to feel something that's watching you, then you have to be willing to feel that yourself. And if you're going to do that, then you need to have a place to train that's going to hold your feet to the fire. And that's all it really is about. Because nobody can teach you to dance, can they? There's only two things they can give you: information and opportunity. And you teach yourself. But if someone can kind of hold the structure strong for you, so we can't squeeze out of it, then we'll have an opportunity to develop from confronting, from the natural confrontational nature of the art form. So I think that in a world that we're getting less and less and less connected, right? Art and dance in particular, especially dance, it's kinetic catharsis, isn't it? Kinetic being movement and catharsis being something you feel without, you feel through someone else's experience. So through someone else's movement, you're having this emotional experience, right? That's what great dance is to me. And it's a connection, and it's an importance, and it's holding the mirror to ourselves and then turning it around and holding it to someone else and saying, what do you think? And as the internet and all those things that are really lovely for certain things, become more and more prominent in our life, we wind up having less and less human contact. So it's art. It's left to the artist, as I guess it always has been. But there are people. I know there's kids that don't talk to each other ever. They only talk to each other through text. They never get on the phone. Yes. Or some people that only email. And oh my goodness gracious, we can't. We have to use our technology to help us, like your gizmo, right? That's what it's for. But it's not that instead of talking to another human being, or instead of trying to figure out what our differences are and what we have more in common than we have different, So I feel like that's what art is. And Nancy and I wanted to make sure that we had a place where young people could interact with that and learn to. We can't teach anybody to dance, like I said, but we can teach you how to learn and how to be excellent at learning. And once you learn how to be excellent at learning, and you put your whole life into any moment and any desire you have passionately, the rest of it, you'll work out.
Wow, that's great. One last question. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered for by the world, the universe, your students, your family, when they think about you?
Wow. So what Lester Wilson and I talked about many years ago, is that rather than trying to become a great artist, I endeavored to try to become a great man, and then let my art express that humanity. Human being first, artist second, right? We're all human beings first, and then we find a way that is most natural to us to express that humanity. So if I could help anybody, and I endeavor to try to correct myself and help whomever I can, whenever I can.
Wow, that's great. Well, I just want to thank you, me and my son Anthony. We want to thank you and your wife.
I thought you were brothers.
No, this is my son. For allowing us to be here, because we really appreciate this opportunity that we had to be able to hear people like Victor and some of the other people that we were able to interview, and this is really invaluable, this information. So we really appreciate it, and I just want to let you know that we look forward to putting you in the magazine, and hopefully if you can find the time to submit an article about some of the things that you just said, so that we can let the world know in print who you are. And we really appreciate your contribution to dance culture, because it's invaluable, and that's why we wanted to record you, because this is going to be a part of the archives for future generations to come.
Really appreciate you guys doing it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Just fact check all my stuff, will you?
We don't have to. It's just a beautiful thing, because we don't, a lot of people